Well, hello and welcome to this inaugural episode of Parish and Pub. My name is Stephen Brandon. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, where for the first time in years, we have had a snow this January. And something about the snowfall, the wiping everything clean, starting to melt away and give us a new start right here in January, the beginning of a new year, gives me an inspiration, I think, to finally start something that I've been wanting to start for a long time, and that is this channel called Parish and Pub. It's going to be a channel dedicated to exploring ideas related to a central thesis that I'll unpack here in a moment, but basically it's that life should primarily be local, and that at the center of each locale should be two foundational, fundamental institutions, the parish and the pub, and that all of life should be essentially built around the parish and the pub. And the reason that's important is because the parish and the pub, these two institutions, are the places which house the two most important human activities, worship and leisure. Now, I think this primary thesis and many of the ideas that flow from it could be a powerfully curative and corrective way of living, and could address and give solutions to so many of the problems that we sense, either consciously or subconsciously, with our contemporary life and reality. So this thesis started forming in my mind one day where I was literally sitting at my local pub, and I started thinking that the pub and my parish, my home parish, were my two favorite places to be. And on the surface, it was easy to explain. Those are the two places where I did the things I enjoy most, i.e. participating in divine worship and conversing with my friends and neighbors in a relaxed and comfortable and disarming space. But it wasn't just my enjoyment of those two places that made me feel so attached to them. It was also that I felt like they were the two most important places that I went. Important in the sense of like profound and meaningful, more important than any of the other restaurants that I might go to, or any other entertainment venues or things that housed any other activities, including even work, my place of work. And when I started to actively reflect on what it was about the parish and the pub and what they're about, that's when this thesis sort of solidified in my mind. Fast forward to when I recently picked up a small book called Leisure, The Basis of Culture by a German philosopher, Joseph Pieper. And I read this sentence by the author in a preface to the English edition. Culture depends for its very existence on leisure, and leisure in its turn is not possible unless it has a durable and consequently living link with the cultus, with divine worship. So with that masterfully concise and pithy summary, camera's falling. All right. So with that masterfully concise and pithy summary of Pieper's main thesis, confirming my own thoughts on this subject and bolstering me to finally start this channel, as well as the fresh snow in Atlanta, here we go. Okay, so we all know that there's a lot wrong with the world, right? Obviously, there has always been a lot wrong with the world. And I don't personally subscribe to the idea that things are necessarily worse now than they've ever been, at least in the sense of, having things like antibiotics and anesthesia. I think it's super cool that we can travel by air to other parts of the world in a matter of hours, that we can digitally connect with other parts of the world immediately. A lot of benefits have come from our modern industry, our recent technology, and I like having these things and would not want to readily give them up. But I think things are definitely very different today, especially in the West, than they've ever been for the vast majority of people across the vast majority of time in the vast majority of the world. I think there have been unintended consequences, serious consequences, to the sacrifices we've collectively made in order to have all these industrial and technological achievements. And we have more and more data showing this. We have data showing that there's a loneliness epidemic, an anxiety epidemic, a meaning crisis. It's arguable, and I think correct, that this is basically the fallout from the breakdown and sometimes total disappearance of some very deeply human behaviors and societal structures that had been a universal part of human existence from time immemorial. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution, we had the first sort of real mass migration of people seeking work from their familial and communal anchorages to highly dense but socially fragmented urban centers, right? And if family was continued in those urban centers, the family became nuclear for the first time, so-called, instead of some like multi-generational and closely connected with cousins and extended family, etc. The nature of work also changed from family businesses and apprenticeships in local guilds and other skilled trades to wage labor for businesses where people became workers, and much more disposable than they would have been in a guild or a family business. The atomizing of people continued as automobiles, cars became more attainable, suburbs sprawled further and further from city or town centers, and of course as the internet provided virtual substitutes for incarnated interactions with other people. People and persons became individuals in our language, and simultaneously, in parallel to all of these developments, the fracturing of Christianity, the thing that made the West, continued on at an increasing pace since the revolution known as the Reformation. Secularism gained ground, and a growing trend of irreligiosity left a vacuum of meaning in society and dissolved many communal bonds which a shared faith and cultus used to provide. So within just a couple hundred years or so, the modern, now late modern, postmodern, whatever you want to call it, the contemporary West has become drastically different, not just technologically, but in its essence, than human societies of the past, from its own pre-modern and medieval predecessors, to classical pagan societies, to the ancient Hebrews, to the Mesopotamian city-states, to the prehistoric peoples of Egypt, Anatolia, the British Isles. You get the picture. They all shared something in common that we have sloughed off in just a few hundred years. What they had in common was, at the center of their societies, a common cultus, which provided the energy, the fertilitas, to create beautiful and wondrous works of art, structures, architecture, carvings, things totally impractical, non-pragmatic, and yet important. These are the things that they valued the most, and from them, whatever's left of them, that we value the most too. Things that are expressive of and resulting from the philosophical act of contemplation, which can only be achieved through leisure. So in our day, in our context, what would it look like to have a community reordered around the cultus and leisure? We obviously live in a multicultural society in the West, with all kinds of people, with all kinds of different beliefs and interests. So for now, at least, I want to be a little more descriptive than prescriptive, and I just want to describe what it looked like the last time the West displayed this, I think, ideal model. The medieval town or village, and at its center, the parish. The parish, or the minster, or the cathedral, was very often quite literally at the center and heart of a local community. And even if it wasn't right at the center, it was invariably always the tallest building around, its tower or spire serving as a visual, directional point to get your bearings by, and accomplishing something symbolic that way, I think, as well. The architectural language of height represented the purpose of the church, which was as a connection point to the transcendent. In the communal worship of the church, there was a collective acknowledging of something greater than ourselves. And the fact that it was communal is significant. There was, of course, the notion of private devotion and personal prayer in relationship with God, going back forever. But none of that replaced or accomplished what assembling as the church, the ecclesia, the assembly, in a shared space accomplished. It united the whole community in a shared sense of purpose, morals, values, helped to lessen or overcome social and class divisions, provided education, healthcare, and aid for the poor, things in our day that are usually left up to the government to provide, strangely, as those are all things the government is demonstrably ill-suited to provide. And in addition to all this, these churches were also marvels of beauty in their architecture, their carvings and iconography, their vestments and vessels and furniture. All these things were meant not only to glorify God, but to also ennoble and upraise the human spirit. And then directly across the street from the church, very often, or just down the lane, or very nearby, was the pub. There was always a public house, an inn, a taverna, or an alehouse close by that served as a gathering place for people to do nothing but hang out, just be in each other's company. Some form of booze, be it wine, ale, beer, gin, or today in my case, bourbon, was always on tap to aid relaxation, to spur conversation. With the drink flowed ideas, conversation. There's a lot to be said for solitude and solitary contemplation. As an introvert, those are things that I greatly prize and privilege. But in a place purpose-built for communal leisure, there's the chance for dialectic, where iron sharpens iron, and where shared meals and drinks foster camaraderie. Stories, music, debates, and celebrations happen there. Very often, communal mourning could also happen there. Unlike most restaurants these days, where you go and eat with a few people every now and then in a rotation with a bunch of other restaurants, a proper pub was a staple with regulars, and it became a sort of forum and agora where you could expect to see the same neighbors, friends, and family on a regular basis. It was like an extension of the parish, even. Now, obviously not every locale can reinvent itself as a medieval town, and a lot of people wouldn't want that, not least those of non-Christian faiths or none. But it's hard to deny that there were clear social, psychological, and spiritual benefits to living in a cohesive culture with a shared transcendental vision and a shared priority for leisure. Now we have a broadly secular worldview in institutions, economic or governmental, that prioritize efficiency and profit over humanity. But even if the realization of what I consider the ideal is a bridge too far for many, there are still plenty of derivative principles which flow from that ideal, which, if implemented even just on their own, I still think would be curative of many of our current ills. Principles like making human conscious places, again, human scaled things, stop making ugly buildings, make buildings that people actually find beautiful, stop making places non-walkable for people, open up zoning for mixed housing and small businesses, applying the principle of subsidiarity to prioritize local government, local economies, and only from there, where a local government or economy can't handle something, then you kick it up to the next level. But you prioritize the local first. How about normalizing 4-day work weeks or incentivizing the hiring of local talent rather than someone who would have to drive an hour and a half to the office every day? These are specific policies, but they're really all just ways of saying we need more cohesive communities and more time for leisure. We already have the alternative to the parish and pub model, and it results in isolation, in loneliness, in anxiety, and burnout. What we need is the transcendent again, and a more intuitive, truly human celebration of the immanent. We need worship and leisure. I propose we need the parish and pub. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you've made it all the way to here. Clearly you have an aptitude for leisure and an attention span that probably puts you in the minority. My plan is to start making more videos. This is a very angry bird. It's a tufted titmouse that hangs around here. It's very, very grumpy. Are you done? So, my plan is to start making more and more videos that start exploring the many subjects that can be sort of diffracted from this bright thesis, this simple thesis that the Parish and Pub ought to be our central foundational institutions. So like and subscribe if you don't mind to keep up with me. Please comment, let me know what you think of the thesis, the idea for the channel, and ideas that you have already that might be related to this concept. Yeah, help me kickstart this channel off. Thank you for joining me. See you next time on Parish and Pub.